called the Opulences of the Absolute, the Vibhuti Yoga chapter here in the 10th chapter of the Gita. And here there are 3 references to time. What can a materialist say about time? What is time? How can it be explained? Well, they're expert at calculating microseconds and everything like that. There's no question about the expert ability to quantify what time is. But to explain what is the meaning of time, and they'll say, I'm sorry, you'll have to go to the philosophy department or the religion or something. We don't have, this is nothing that we're interested in. It's not important for us. We have our, business to take care of. So what is the meaning of time? When, you're waiting in a bus queue and it's -20 outside, time goes very slow, right? Did you ever notice? My poor sister, I have several siblings. It reminds me of my old sister. She was taking a course at night after work, and as an adult education, and she was at the university there, and then it ended like 9 o'clock at night in the winter in Philadelphia there in Pennsylvania. And then she went out to the train station, and she was waiting for the train, which is that late in the evening. It just comes every hour, from the suburb. But in that train station, you have to pull the thing for the train to stop. Otherwise the train doesn't stop. So she was sitting there freezing, waiting, for the train to come late at night. She had worked all day, and she had studied extra in the evening, and she forgot to pull the thing. So then the train just zoomed right by her, and she had to wait for another hour, and everything was closed that late at night, and she caught pneumonia actually. So time can be very devastating sometimes for us, and sometimes time can go very, very quickly. There's a saying in Swedish, when you're having fun, time goes very quick. Suddenly it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I think many of the people last night discovered were partying, and then suddenly it was. So time is a mysterious thing, but according to let's see what the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will say here about what is time. But first, let us offer our humble obeisances. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Let us offer humble obeisances unto Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Vasudev. He is all pervasive. Yeah. Even here in Scandinavia. Doers, I am time. Yeah. So in verse number 30 here in the 10th chapter, Krishna says like this. I'll just read it. Praladash chasmi daijanam kala yatam aham mriganam cha mrigendro ham vainateyash cha pakshinam. Yeah, this is an answer to the question of the dialogue here between Arjuna and Krishna there at the Kurukshetra, just before the fateful encounter of the Kauravas and the Pandavas there in the famous Mahabharata epic. climax. So here, Arjuna was asking, how is it that I can think of you? Please tell me. In everyday life, in my regular, I'm a prince, and I'm a family man. I'm married, and I'm a soldier, and here it is. So how is it impossible to think of you in my situation? And then Krishna says, he gave a whole list of many of his vibhutis, most wonderful things, anything that's glorious or powerful or extraordinary in this world. That's Krishna. It's a vibhuti. It's Krishna. It becomes extraordinary, or he or she become powerful or wonderful because of being touched by the original wonder and power and extraordinary Krishna. So the translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, again, we're reading from our founder's special translation. He called it as it is. That's quite a bold assertion. So many different translations of Bhagavad Gita, but he claims that his is as it is. And his claim is based on the fact that he is following his line of successors that go back to Krishna. So he claims that he's a transparent media because he isn't adding or subtracting anything of his own, but he's simply a mouthpiece for the original message. So that's this version here. And his translation is this: among the Daitya demons, I am the devoted Prahlad. Among subduers, I am time. Kalayatam aham. Kalayatam means subduer, that which brings something to its conclusion. Subduer, or one who dominates, or one who controls that. So time is controlling us, isn't it? Even everybody must admit that you don't like to become old and gray and wrinkled and blind and everything, but it happens. Yes, time is going, and nobody can stop it, right? So that's Krishna's assertion here. And then not in the next verse, but in the verse after that, Krishna says again that Sarganam Adir Antash Cha. So of all creations, Sarga, I am the Adir, the beginning, and the Anta, the end. So Krishna, he's the beginning. Oh, and he also says Madhyam Chaivaham. Madhyam Chaviham Arjuna. Sarganam Adir Antascha. Madhyam Chavaham Arjuna. Sorry for butchering your Sanskrit here. But yeah, he says the translation of all creations, I am the beginning, the end, and also the middle. So Krishna is there. He's, that's why in the Brahminical culture, in the Varnashram, it's a social and and spiritual order of arranging society in the ancient Vedic culture. And the Brahmins, at least, if not others, they would observe the sandhyas. The sandhyas are the transitions, right? That's time's important influence there. So that in the morning, when the night turns into day, that's the morning sandhya. And then when the sun is in its zenith, the high point where it goes from morning to afternoon, that's the midday sandhya. And then in the evening when the sun is setting, that's up in Haparanda where I live in Tornio, Haparanda. It's about how many kilometers from here? Maybe 8,000, 800?
700. More than 700.
700 kilometers north of here. Well, on the day of the winter solstice, from the time of the fall equinox, then the sun is exactly there in the east there. But then gradually, during the course of September, October, November, December, it travels to the south, right? And then at one point it stops going south, and then it turns back and starts going north. That's called, it stands still for an instant, that's time. And that was, I think, 11 o'clock at night on the 22nd of December there. It was there at the solstice. But at the noontime that day, I was at the school where I teach. And although I'm actually a pensioner, I'm over the hill since a long time ago. But still, I still have some mental and physical strength, so I teach now still a few more days. Actually, my ambition is to I mentioned my elder sister who got pneumonia. Well, she recovered, thank God. And she was a teacher at her basic training in education. But then she worked in other things her whole life. But then when she was 65, she retired, in quotation marks. But she was offered a teaching position at a community college there in New Jersey where she lived, and she loved it. And then she went on teaching until she was 80. So now I'm, not that old yet, but I'm going to try and break her record. God willing, How do you say it in Finnish? You told me.
Jos Jumala suo.
Yeah, one more time.
Jos Jumala suo.
Yeah, God willing.
Jos Herra suo.
Your Herra suo. Your Herra suo, yeah. Inshallah, or, Mo Guds vilja ske, they say in Sweden. Like that. So anyway, time is such that it is beginning, it's the middle, and it's the end. And of course, we know that our final examination is there at the time of our final breath, which is coming for all of us. And at that time, Krishna asserts that whatever it is that you remember then that you will attain without fail. Now you can think, oh my God, what if I'm in a coma, or what if I have Alzheimer, or I'm become demented, or I'm senile, I might, who knows what I'm thinking of, it's kind of scary, or not scary, it's actually an intelligent foresight to think what might happen. Now it's the 1st of January, but we shouldn't just think of everything bright things. We should also take into account maybe there are some things that we should be careful to think about, that we might want to try to as far as we can prevent for ourselves and our loved ones, like that. So anyway, what can we do at the time of death if the body goes its own way, right? It'll get old, it'll get debilitated, it'll get diseased, there will be problems, and the mind is also a physical element. It's not us. It's also being outside our control. It's like the wind, as Arjuna says in the Gita. So what can we do? Well, it reminds me that there was a great acharya in the South Indian Dravida culture, the Sri Sampradaya, the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Ramanuja. And he had many, many disciples about 1,000 years ago. He had many, many disciples. He was a very important person. So he was concerned that he had promised his disciples that if you follow my instructions, I guarantee that you will go back to the spiritual world at the end of this life. He promised. He's a guru. And, but then he, like a, compassionate fatherly figure, he was worried. Well, what happens if they become demented or, coma or accident or something happens and they can't remember Krishna at the time of their death, although they've tried sincerely their whole life? Then what happens to them if they happen to be thinking about, something irrelevant or something not proper at that accidental time? What happens to them? He was concerned as a responsible. So he presented his question to the deity. It's Varadaraj, right? The best of all Benedictors. Varadaraj, that was his deity? I think so. Yeah. Okay. And then Varadaraj answered. He could talk to him. He wasn't an ordinary person. They were having, conversation. He was in charge of 60,000 disciples. So, Varadaraj was, giving him the proper instructions there to do his work. So, he asked, my dear Varadaraj, what happens if my disciples cannot remember you at the time of their death, at that critical moment? Then what will happen to them? And then Varadaraj assured him, he said, if my devotee forgets me at the time of death, I remember my devotee. Problem solved. Thank God. So we can be assured, though, that if we practice sincerely under the guidance of our, if we're so fortunate to have a teacher who is guiding us to go back to the spiritual world by remembering Krishna now during our, struggle for existence in our daily life. January 1st, 2023, for example, then we can be assured that whatever happens, this will be successful. And maybe even if necessary, like Arjuna said, that what happens if, the attempt is unsuccessful, perhaps because of habit or whatever, we may divert from this process and become, fallen from our attempt to follow the instructions and go back to Godhead. Well, then, there's also no loss, because in our next life we will be given the opportunity to remember our goal and be given intelligence how to resume that path. There's no loss. We can be assured. Now, one more here is that text 33, the next verse, Krishna says, Aksharam akarosmi. I'm just looking that I didn't hop over something in the purport here that Prabhupada mentioned. Yeah, Prabhupada, before I go on, Prabhupada says here that this is now the purport, the gloss or the explanation of this verse by the founder of the author, the translator and commentator on this version of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada, our founder here in this. He writes like this: among the created manifestations, the first is the creation of the total material elements. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego, like that. The total material elements. As explained before, the cosmic manifestation is created and conducted by Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Shiradaksha Vishnu. And then it is annihilated by Lord Shiva. Brahma is a secondary creator, right? So Vishnu creates the elements, and then Brahma is the first created entity in a universe, Lord Brahma, and he is like an engineer. He does this incredibly complicated job of putting together the living entities and their karma from previous lives. That's quite a demanding occupation. All these agents of creation, maintenance, and annihilation are incarnations of the material qualities of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. Prabhupada uses this word liberally, incarnations. So here are these vibhutis. They're not God, but they're empowered by God. So they become incarnations in that sense. Therefore, he is the beginning, the middle, and the end of all creation. Okay, one more investigation here in the next verse about time here, in text 33. Here, Krishna says, Aksharanam akaro sme dvandva samas kasyacha aham evakshaya kalo dattaham vishvatomuka. Of letters, I am the letter A, and among compound words, I am the dual compound. I am also inexhaustible time, and of creators, I am Brahma. Aham evakshayo kalo. I, aham, eva, certainly, akshaya here, eternal, and kala, time. So time is inexhaustible. There's no end to time. Of course, everything in this world, there's an end. That's the characteristic of matter, is that it's not eternal. It's temporary. This body, for example, primarily you can be aware that this is a temporary housing or vehicle or covering for the self, for ourself. But the self, the consciousness, the person, there's no end. That's eternal. And in the purport, Krishna says, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, among all kinds of killers, time is the ultimate because time kills everything. Time is the representative of Krishna because in due course of time, there will be a great fire and everything will be annihilated. Yeah, that's the cosmic understanding of the Vedas, that the sun becomes, many, many times stronger, and then everything becomes dried up, and all life is extinguished. There's no life without water, right? And then there'll be fire, and everything will be destroyed. And then there will be rain for, aeons, like that. That's the understanding here. But it's interesting that Krishna says that Prabhupada says that that time kills everything. And, time is the representative of Krishna. So how do we understand, that people are afraid that, that religion presents such a dark picture that, God is angry maybe and, punishes. And he's a kid. Here he's even called a killer. How can we understand and accommodate that, in our, desire to understand God with love and to be able to, with confidence, place our trust in the Lord. You don't place your trust in a killer, do you? But we have to remember that, this is a play here. That Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhuva How's that go? Nayam Bhuva Abhi Bhuyaha. Yes. That, yeah, the translation, how does it start? For the soul, there is neither birth nor death, right?
No, no having one comes into existence, doesn't cease to exist.
Right. The soul has not been created and it will not cease to exist. So we're talking about two different levels here, actually. One is the physical level, and the body is certainly going to die. We all know that our parents or grandparents and others that are dying. We can read the newspaper every day. It's one after the other. There's ahani bhutani gachantiha yamalaya. The Yudhishthir, the hero of the Mahabharata, he was asked, what is the most wonderful thing in the world? And he answered, well, daily we're seeing one by one people going to Yamalaya. They're dead, they're dying. But everybody has this, inexhaustible conviction that it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to die. Because, you can't really get into life if you're not convinced that you're living and that you're going to live. And, so we are living and we will never die. We, the soul. But, the amazing thing is that people have to think that, my body is not going to die. If you want to be a good spiritualist, you should think, I'm going to die soon. And if you want to get your work done here in the material world, you should think, I'm going to live forever. That's psychology here, So we have to use psychology sometimes. So here, Krishna, though, he's going to kill our, need for having this mundane psychology. He's called Hari, which means he takes away our death. He takes away our, the need to have this complicated mental psychology of protecting, our enthusiasm for working and the struggle for existence in this world by thinking that we're going to live forever. He takes all this away. But that kind of killing, that's, you could say that he steals our heart. Normally we don't worship thieves, do we? We try to lock them out and keep them from getting to our possessions. But Krishna, he somehow breaks through all our security systems. It steals our main possession, our heart, our consciousness. Krishna, he grabs that. Just like in the wonderful Bhagavat, we see the damsels of Vraja. They were totally sold out, to say the least. That Krishna they couldn't help themselves. Okay, so Krishna's time here. And time is going now. The offering is going on the altar. And it's now, we have a maximum 20 minutes more for including questions. But before we do that, questions and everything, I would like to show, it's in 1973, that's 50 years ago this year, in September, Scandinavia was blessed by the arrival of a genuine saint, the Prabhupada, the founder of Hare Krishna movement, a genuine saint who practiced what he preached, who lived until his last breath, perfectly well documented biographical strategy, line of devotion to Krishna. So a real saint. So he came to Sweden. He came to Arlanda Airport in Stockholm. And this is the north. As far as we have documentation. God only knows what Prabhupada did when he was. But the documentation that we have in biographical information is that this is the northernmost place that Prabhupada ever visited. He, of course, was traveling extensively in India, up towards northern India there. I know when he came to the West, he was visiting Moscow, he was visiting Scotland, he was visiting Montreal and Toronto in Canada. So he was north, but Stockholm is hundreds of kilometers north of all those places. So this is kind of one of the corners on this, the global Sankirtan map of ISKCON and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he came there in September of 1973, and on this video we can watch, we can see a little there how he arrives. Okay, let's watch this.
Let's move a little bit.
Okay, wait a second.
Can you stop for us?
Yeah.
Can we move a little bit forward so everyone can fit, please? Thank you. Okay.
September 1973, Stockholm Arlanda Airport. That was Krishna Das. Now this is Smita Krishna Swami, Swedish sannyasi, placing two garlands of Prabhupada. GBC, Panditji Yogindra Krishna Das there. The VIP room at the Arlanda Airport. And there were 70 devotees from Germany, Amsterdam. This is, what's his name, Yogindra? Narendra on the drum. This is Vaishnav standing with his back to us and blocking the camera. This is an SVT reporter there, Swedish television.
Gentlemen, I thank you very much for your kindly receiving me. This is the first time I am coming in this country, Sweden.
Is it a serious movement if the Beatles are telling the truth? Hare Krishna is a little bit of a bluff.
Who said bluff?
The
Who is that
Beatles.
fool? Who is the rascal?
Big house.
Some rascal, but I know George is our very good teacher.
George Harrison
Yeah.
is your member.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have lots of members?
Yes, certainly. Don't you see?
How many?
About 5,000 all over the world.
5,000.
Those are initiated. Otherwise, there are many thousands our admirers
In all countries.
all over the world.
Okay, stop. So this is a typical example of Srila Prabhupada interacting with media and reporters. Prabhupada, he was attracted attention. There were, make a long story short, and the reporters, they were always eager to do their job of getting some sensational story for their press, So they would go to Prabhupada and he would always, have some interesting interaction. Sometimes he was very, very sharp with them. Anyway, that's a whole, public relations and the Hare Krishna movement has been a learning experience now of 50 years. We do have ISKCON communications in later decades who have, very dedicated devotees who are very intelligent and know how to interact with media and public relations and so like that. But, it's been a learning experience because our first attempt was simply to attract attention by, for example, shaving our head and keeping this funny ponytail and wearing sheets and, having 2 marks on our forehead and so many, things. And girls in, saris, dancing out in public, it's a little while. I remember, just a short little digression here. I remember Swami there in Mayapur. I forget his name. He was, his grandfather, or his uncle was a member of the Gaudiya Nath. And he was a young boy. He started coming to ISKCON Mayapur there. And, Indian, local, Bengali. And then, his mother came, to see what is my boy getting himself into, traditional Bengali mama. So she came there and she saw these Western girls, with the sari and tila, and dancing wildly there, beautiful young girls, dancing without, just in ecstasy. And she was thinking, no, this isn't our culture, My poor boy, you gotta bring him home. He survived. He became a sannyasi. I forget his name now, but he's a very nice sannyasi. He survived the Western girls. But in any case, it's always been with the media. So now here is SV. Now this is another program that just was released today. It's actually going to be broadcasted on the Swedish television on the 9th of January, because every year the Swedish television on the 1st of the year, they release a program called The Year Was, and then 50 years ago. So now this year it's the year was 1973, and then they show all the things that are going on there. Well, one thing that they noticed was that Prabhupada came, and they had that here. And after 50 minutes, just after a section where they were showing that in 1973, the prime minister was Olof Palme. And then they just connect they're talking about Olof Palme, and then they start showing Prabhupada. But again, they're interviewing the Prabhupada disciple who was Swedish Prabhupada disciple who invited Prabhupada to come in 1973. His name was Willie Finger or Ajit Das. And, I just spoke to Ajit on the phone today, and, he looked at this and, he said, yeah, good, all right. But he wasn't very happy with this because actually they interviewed him for an hour, and the journalists who interviewed him, for this, they were very, very nice people and interested. But, journalism, it's to make a sensation, you have to sell your product. So they clipped it, and, he wasn't, the parts that they put in here, it wasn't the best thing that he said. But anyway, it's something, Okay. So, okay, let's, it's in Swedish, however. How are we going to do this? Am I going to try and make a...
You can, there's outline.
You want to make a running translation?
You can make a summary also afterwards if you want.
Where's Radha Madhava? Who's expert? Swedish, English.
There might be subtitles, yeah.
No, there are none. Let's watch, okay? Then we can.
Which minute?
Yeah, right here. Just let it go.
Sticker ut lite grann, bland annat kostym en septemberdag på Arlanda. Hare Krishnas andlige ledare. Ingen verkar skämmas för att stiga ut sånt. Det vill jag som bjöd in honom. Han har varit med i rörelsen i några år nu.
Jag sökte lite efter någonting meningsfullt, engagerande.
Can you stop?
Och det hörde jag.
Yeah, okay, this is Willie, this is Ajit Das, and they said, well, first they said that, this Andlig, the spiritual master for the Hare Krishnas, they showed up here at Arlanda, and, nobody was at all hesitant to, make a big show out of it. Offering him garlands and bowing down on the ground in the airport, they didn't care a thing about what everybody was thinking. Now here is Willie. He's the one he was at that time a young Swedish boy, around 20 years old, the one who invited Prabhupada to come to Sweden. And now Billy is going to say, oh, there are, but the,
Yeah, but this is better because many Finnish, they understand Swedish, so this
Okay,
is
yeah,
already
good.
much better.
yeah, there are Swedish subtitles. But, he said that, I heard Hare Krishna mantra when I was 20, and then I was looking for something. Okay, let's go on.
Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Ja, det här kan ju vara intressant.
Willy, en hippie på drygt 20, som hittade rätt i en park i Australien och vill ta Hare Krishna med sig hem till Sverige.
Men så skrev jag då till Prabhupada och frågade om jag kunde åka till Sverige för att öppna tempel där. Och han skrev att han skulle bli jätteglad om man gör det. Så
Stop. Yeah, so he said that he joined, he found the Hare Krishna mantra, Willie, in Australia, in a park. They were chanting, and he became attracted. He joined there. And then he asked Prabhupada, well, maybe I should bring this back to Sweden and try and start something in Sweden. And then Prabhupada wrote him this letter and said, yes, I'll come and help you, Prabhupada said to him. And the fact is that Prabhupada had great hopes for Scandinavia. The reason is that a godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, who was also the same spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta, a German professor of Sanskrit actually, he had a Swedish disciple by the name of Walter Eiglitz, who had gotten the Stockholm University to help him publish in 1968 a large book in German about Lord Chaitanya and his life and preachings. This is the first big book coming from, Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples in Europe. And Walter Eiglitz, the Swedish gentleman, he sent this book to Prabhupada, who was then in Canada. And Prabhupada sold this book in German. He couldn't read it, but he understood this is coming from Bhaktisiddhanta, my Guru Maharaj. Here, a Swedish institute has published my spiritual master's, mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he thought, wow, Scandinavia is right. Prabhupada had great expectations. And we saw just before this a nice picture of Prabhupada with and that was from Uppsala University, where Prabhupada was speaking in a philosophical institute there. And he was very, very happy there. Okay, so this is the letter where Prabhupada said, yes, go to Sweden and start. Carry on here, please.
först åkte till Indien för att skaffa utrustning, såna här gudabilder och gravband och kläder och sånt. Vi var 5 stycken som kom då till Sverige och vår första bas var då mina föräldrars villa i Västerås. De var nog lite...
Yeah, this is Willie and his wife, Krishna Premi, an Australian lady. And they together were essential for when I came to the temple in Stockholm in 1975, a couple of years later after this. They were the ones who were my mentors, and I'm very, very grateful to him. And also his wife, she was very motherly and helped me to make this transition. But anyway, he was saying here that the first thing we did when we came to, my wife and I came to Sweden, we were parked out we were at my parents' house in a small town in middle Sweden. And he goes on to explain that from that base, they were going around traveling to different towns and eventually Stockholm to, spread Krishna consciousness by chanting and selling books. And he told me, he didn't mention it here, but he told me that when they were there at his parents' house in this small town there, they grew a tulasi plant, And then when they were going traveling, his mother would like dutifully, take care of Tulasi. And she, and then they, with the help of Smita Krishnaswamy, they translated the first book in Swedish, All Glädje Källa, how do you say it? Yeah, right. And they got a whole pallet of these delivered to their, parents' house, and they just like took over the, storage room, with a whole pallet of books. Anyway,
He mentioned that they came 5. Who are the other ones?
Yeah, it was Krishna, his wife, Krishna Premi, it was Bhagavan, and his wife was the Australian wife, Padmavati. And then Smita Krishnaswamy came from Hamburg. He's a Swedish, devotee, but he joined, there was no movement in Sweden at that time in the early 70s. So he joined the movement in Hamburg. But then when they came from Australia, then he joined them there.
And they got married in Bombay in the big Panda program.
Yeah.
100,000 people.
Right.
In front of them all.
That's another whole interesting story. That was also 50 years ago last year. Okay, carry on please.
Lite chockade, för vi hade ju raka typer och indiska kläder på oss, alltså när de mötte oss vid stationen och så. Så att, min pappa var ju ateist. Han sa, ja vi har ju haft galningar i familjen tidigare. Men så här efter hade jag tänkt, vilket tålamod, vad snälla de var liksom.
Yeah, this is, again, to compete in 1973, Prabhupada gave us a strategy of being very, very exotic. We had, like I said, a very unusual appearance, and we were out in the street chanting, and it succeeded in attracting attention. Well, especially it was mentioned in the previous video about George Harrison of the then most popular band, the Beatles. He was undoubtedly a vibhuti of Krishna. He was empowered by Krishna to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, or the name, at least the Hare Krishna word, to every household around the world, practically, by this, allowing the devotees to make a record on the Apple label there. So this exotic PR work of youthful men and women going out in exotic dress and chanting and so on, it had its function and still has, no doubt about it. But as Ajit Prabhu here is explaining, that his parents, they were very, very tolerant. They accepted that. And we can go on. Sorry?
That article was saying that their mission is to spread Hare Krishna among materialistic people.
Yeah, it's a challenge, just they haven't explained it yet, but they're about to explain the regulative principles. So, this is not going to sell products, saying no intoxication, no meat eating, sex only for procreation. This is not going to be Madison Avenue advertisement material. But still, truth be told, go ahead.
Den nordiska naturen, det är inte helt enkelt. Sen reste vi runt och i tält till Eskilstuna, Västerås, Uppsala, Stockholm. De flesta tyckte det var konstigt. Folk nästan gick undan när man på gatorna där vi kom. Så att jag tyckte det var lite jobbigt. En del i det hela var ju också att övervinna just det här sociala trycket och sådana saker och bli stark i sig själv. Liksom. Det tror jag Krishna var det som lärde mig.
Yeah, this is the temple where after they had lived at their parents' house, they rented a villa in a suburb of Stockholm called Spånga. And in 1973, that's where the temple was when Prabhupada came. And so here we see a group of about 70 devotees from Germany and from Amsterdam and from some from Australia and different places, or Americans were all gathered there for Prabhupada's wonderful week. And at this time, Prabhupada took a visit from the Indian ambassador to Sweden. His name was Mr. Damodar. He was a South Indian gentleman. And they had a very, very cordial conversation. It's recorded and available if anybody would like to hear it. I can direct you to find it. And Prabhupada also was invited to speak at the Stockholm University, and he was also invited to speak at the Uppsala University. And he also spoke with a professor, Sunasen, who was a Sanskrit and Bengali expert. Very nice conversation. He also spoke with a psychiatrist. So one thing about this is that now these 70 disciples now are of course spread all over the world nowadays, but there isn't a very plan now for next September 2023, where the Swedish devotees are inviting as many of these as possible to come for a reunion in Sweden. And one devotee who is Professor Ferdinando Sardella Pranava, it's a dream come true that he got the faculty, the dean at Stockholm University, to allow him to arrange an academic workshop on that day, September 6th, the same day that Prabhupada spoke in 1973. There will be at Stockholm University an academic workshop where scholars like Knut Jakobsen and maybe Professor Graham Sveg and others, learned scholars in the study of religion will be invited to come in the same auditorium where Prabhupada spoke. It's a wonderful thing that has occurred. And that is the day, that's September 6th. As it so happens by time, that is next year. Janmashtami is a little late next year. So the day after that conference, that week when Prabhupada was here, that's Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja. The celebrations will occur then. And these devotees are being invited to come there to Korsnäs, the temple in Stockholm there too. But many of these are now sannyasis. There's like Bhakti Vaibhav Maharaj, there's Bhakti Bhushana Maharaj, there's Sachinandan Swami, there's many, Bhakti Gauravani Swami, Dhirashanta Swami. There's a bunch of them are disciples and are very bound during Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja to their various responsibilities. So there will be also 2 days after Janmashtami Vyasa Puja, there will be a reunion at Amvik, and they're invited to come there if they cannot come before then. Pritu Prabhu has already responded, and also Gaurachand and Bhakti Vaibhav Maharaj, who is the GBC here. He responded very, very positively to the invitation. He said, yes, I definitely want to come. I'll do everything within that I can to arrange if possible. He has a lot of responsibilities, so he cannot so far in advance say. So anyway, there's going to be a nice, like that. Okay, we finish up now, please. This is the end.
En asketisk religion på många sätt, med rötter i Indien, vegetarisk mat, förbud mot berusningsmedel och sex endast för att skaffa barn. Och ett speciellt förhållande mellan lärjungen och gurun. Inte en gud, men inte heller en vanlig människa.
När man möter en person som man vördar för att han är något slags ideal i det sammanhanget, då upplever man också en viss känsla som är speciell. Jag ångrar inte att jag var med. Snarare förvånad över att jag stod ut med en del saker lite väl länge.
Okay, that's it. So that was the conclusion. The conclusion was this is a religion that has its roots in English, in India. And it is it's ascetic, no drugs, no intoxication, no meat eating, and sex only for procreating children, And then the very nice conclusion there was that Ajit, and then they said, yes, it has a very special relationship between disciple and guru. And then Ajit went on to explain there that, when you give your respect to a person who is ideal, especially in a spiritual context, then you get a special feeling from that. That's a very important statement. That's true. When you accept the lotus feet of a spiritual master, and you, as it said, you open up yourself, you take away your defenses, and you let that person influence you for transformation. You're ready to accept what that person says. You recognize that person as being categorically superior, and you give that person the recognition, and you open up yourself and say, yes, I will let this person transform me, but I will follow what they say, although it means I'm going to have to change myself. Then you get a special feeling. There's a saying in English, no cognition without recognition. You have to first recognize this person is categorically above me. Right? And without that recognition, there will be no cognition. You're not going to be able to understand what he's saying, or he or she is saying. And the other thing is that unless you're prepared to do service, to transform yourself, to change, you're not going to get it. The saying is, no information without transformation. In other words, if you're willing to follow what this person says, then you're going to you'll get the message. That's the trick here. It's very special between guru and disciple here. So this is very nice. I mean, again, Ajit, he said a lot more things. He's actually a scholar of religion at the Stockholm University. He's retired now. He's 75 almost now, but still he's teaching at Stockholm University to a certain degree. He's a learned scholar. He's written his dissertation for his doctorate degree in multicultural dialogue, multi-religious dialogue, interreligious dialogue like that. So he said when they interviewed him, they asked him very good questions, and he said a lot more interesting things. But to make it viewer friendly, and Swedish TV, they chopped it down to this, So he wasn't particularly impressed with what they did, They just took the things that he said about being exotic, and he felt a little used actually, by them. But anyway, it's great that they're showing this on TV. Okay, so any questions or comments?